Now we're going to do something different. Daniel has been the timeline of events that happen in the tribulation, and some of them precursor to it. However, now we'll go to a book that'll deal with not just a timeline, not a history or a layout of events, but an actual attitude that you're supposed to have for those who have to live through the tribulation. Not Hebrews, First Peter, First Peter. Now I know there's some verses in there that you can stretch and spiritualize and make them church age, and you should do that to get a personal application. If you want doctrinal, this book is written to the Jews that'll be in the tribulation. 1 Peter 1, verse 1. He says, Peter, an apostle of Jesus Christ, to the strangers scattered throughout Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia. Okay, so he's told you right off the bat who he's writing to. Strangers that are scattered. Well, when I wake up in the morning and try to think, I think I'm there. A strange scattered. Look at these scattered people. What does he mean by this? Genesis 31, verse 15. There's Rachel and Leah's comment about Laban. Genesis 31:15. Are we not counted of him strange? He hath sold us, and hath quite devoured also our money. He says, sold. Now that's what God has done with Israel. He's sold them. Over and over, you've seen it in the Old Testament. And that's the minor prophets. It's him selling them to one heathen and then to another. And it's only a temporary. He always buys them back, gets them back in. But this is who the writing for the first book of Peter is to, is somebody who's scattered. Exodus 6, verse 4. And I have also established my covenant with them. So who's that? That's obviously Israel. That's who got the oracles. To give them the land of Canaan, the land of their pilgrimage, wherein they were strangers. The strangers here is Jews, the Israelites. It'll follow pretty much all the way through. I'll show you when it changes. Exodus 23, this is not where it changes. Exodus 23, verse 9. Or actually, this is where it changes. Exodus 23, verse 9. Here's Israel in their land, and here's what's going on. He says, Exodus 23:9. Also, thou shalt not oppress a stranger, for ye know the heart of a stranger, seeing ye were strangers in the land of Egypt. So the Israelites, when they were in Egypt, didn't belong to Egypt. They're strange there, and they should be. He says, when you're in your land and a stranger, someone that's not a Jew, wanders in, here's the rules and the regulations, and remember, one day you were a stranger too, and have as much mercy on them as you wish someone would have had on you. Leviticus 25, verse 23. Leviticus is one of my favorite books. He says, the land shall not be sold forever, for the land is mine. I like that. For ye are strangers, talking to Israel, and sojourners with me. Now, right now, in the land of Israel, God is a stranger. They don't recognize him. They recognize that God has no resemblance to a biblical God. He says, this land is mine, I own it. And you own my land. You're just a pilgrim here. You're just traveling through. Look at it in 1 Chronicles 29. He says, 1 Chronicles 29:15. For we are strangers before thee, and sojourners, as were all our fathers. Our days on the earth are as a shadow, and there is none abiding. We've been strangers, talking about all the Israelites. All their days, they've been strangers, and they still are. They're in all the lands they shouldn't be, and that's strange for them. And every land that they flee to, the people think they're strange. And they are the strange, and that's the way God set it up. Look at Jeremiah 35. Jeremiah 35:7. He says, neither shall ye build houses, nor sow seed, nor plant vineyards, nor have anything, but all your days ye shall dwell in tents, that you may live many days in the land where ye be strangers. So that's Israel scattered. All the way through the Bible, God keeps saying the same thing. You're scattered and you're strangers. And he's talking to his people. So Peter picks up the same tune and says, I'm writing to the strangers that are scattered. And this is the story he's going to give. Now, strangers probably in our passage is referring to the Jews, not to pagans. This would be the majority, not the minority. A stranger would be a minority, so obviously that would be the Jew. Now I'll give you some Some heavy verses. Acts 2. Acts 2, verse 5. I'm going to start you out easy. Acts 2, 5. It says, and there were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews, out men out of every nation under heaven. It is, these people had been scattered into all these different nations. And that's where we find the Pentecost that happens at chapter 2 of Acts. These Jews had been scattered into all these different nations, and they'd come back to Jerusalem. This is where God performs the miracle. Acts 17, verse 21. What happens when a Jew gets scattered into another country and assimilates? God can unassimilate them. 17:21. For all the Athenians and strangers, not the same as the Athenians, which were there, spent their time in nothing else but either to tell or to hear some new thing. It is, they were living soap operas, some new thing, and it's, the news media, at the beginning of the news media, some new thing, and everybody craves it. They want to hear a news story. He says right here, the Athenians, so that was the people in Athenia, and the strangers, those who were newly there, brought in, that's the Jew. Look at it in Hebrews 11. Hebrews 11, verse 13. He's gone through and given you the patriarchs, and this is called the Hall of Faith, but you could also call it the patriarchs, because he's going through and he's given you his idea of all the heroes of Israel. Hebrews 11, verse 13. These all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, and were persuaded of them, and embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. Who he's writing to, these strangers and pilgrims, identified in Hebrews. Read the chapter, Hebrews 11, they're all Jews. Now, there's sometimes a Gentile is considered a stranger. Look at it in Exodus 20. Oh, we already saw it. Go to Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy 24. Deuteronomy 24:14. Here's when a Gentile could be considered a stranger. I'm going to give you both sets of verses, and you can decide which it is. I've already told you which it is, but you can decide for yourself. Now I'm going to argue against myself. Deuteronomy 24:14. Thou shalt not oppress an hired servant that is poor and needy, whether it be of thy brethren, Jews, or of thy stranger, some Gentile, that are in thy land within thy gate. So you hired a servant, and it was either a Jew, or it was a Gentile who had wandered into your city. And so that's the Gentile then was considered the stranger. We got Nehemiah 9. Nehemiah 9, verse 2. Nehemiah 9, 2. This is Israel getting right. Nehemiah 9, 2. And the seed of Israel separated themselves from all strangers and stood and confessed their sins and the iniquities of their fathers. Okay, so they're the stranger in the passage is the Jews, the heathen that were around them. Psalm 146, verse 9. Now, this could be either, this could be a generalization or specific. Psalm 146, verse 9. The Lord preserveth the stranger. He relieveth the fatherless and widow, but the way of the wicked he turneth upside down. I've been looking for that verse. I need to remember. I have to come back to it. This is one of the verses I use to say that when a person dies, they don't drop into hell. They get flipped upside down. They're like in a tornado. And I'm going way off script now. The tornado goes through a portal through the deep into outer space. And from there, they end up in hell. Okay, I'll give you all the verses on that another time. Correct, there's all. Until they're in the millennium, and then they could be bodily thrown in. Isaiah 1, verse 7. Good, thank you. Our country is desolate. Our cities are burned with fire. Your land, strangers, that's the Gentiles, devour it in your presence. And it is desolate, is overthrown by strangers, the pagans. They've come in. And they're called the stranger at this point because the point of view is Israel is the good place. Anything outside of it is the strange spot. Strange. Okay, Ezekiel 47, verse 14. And ye shall inherit it, one as well as another, concerning the which I lift up mine hand to give it to your father. And this land shall fall unto you for inheritance. God's giving them his land. Watch what happens. Ezekiel 47, verse 22. And it shall come to pass that ye shall divide it by lot for an inheritance unto you. To the strangers that sojourn among you. Okay, obviously that's not of their fathers. We've changed heritages here. It's a different genealogy list he's talking about. The strangers are someone different than the inheritance of the father. And so that's obviously a stranger being called a pagan being called a stranger. Obadiah 1 verse 9 says, "Thy mighty men, O Teman," that's obviously Gentiles, "shall be dismayed to the end that every one of the mount of Esau may be cut off by slaughter." Those are the people that are south of Israel, so it's obviously not part of Israel. And I didn't give you the rest of the verses on it, but you can read that passage and see how the Gentile is the stranger at this point. Look at Ephesians 2, Ephesians 2:12, Ephesians 2:12. Now God set up Israel, the nation, to be a weird duck. He told them how to dress. He told them when and they could cut their hair and when they couldn't, and how much they could cut, and all the things about them in order to make them weirdo. He says, I want you to look different, talk different, and act different, so that anywhere you are, they identify you as a strange bird. A strange. Ephesians 2 verse 12, we should be too. That at that time you were without Christ, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel, and strangers from the covenants and promises, having no hope, without God in the world. Now you've got hope, you're in God, and you're no longer a stranger, so this world should consider you a stranger. Now, unfortunately, Israel, if you go over there right now, would consider you the stranger. But that's not the way it should be. The way it should be is we're weird because God made us weird. We have standards. Now, we shouldn't all have the same standard. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that God will tell you what's right for you and wrong for you, and then hold to it, regardless of how it makes you act or look. Get it in 3 John. 3 John 1, verse 5. 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John are all tribulation books as well. He says, Beloved, thou dost faithfully whatsoever thou dost to the brethren, the Jews, and to strangers. This is a tribulation book, which I say it is, and we've already gone through it before, but that's a tribulation book. So the stranger would be someone other than the Jew. That's who God's focused on in the tribulation, is the Jew. The stranger would be the Gentile. More than likely, you're going to find the word scattered with a Jew, because that's what God did in order to say, I'm done with you as a nation. I'm going to disintegrate the nation. Now he brings the nation back together when it's time. It's 5 verse 12. Exodus 5:12. So the people were scattered abroad throughout all the land of Egypt, together stubble instead of straw. That is, even when they're in a pagan land, they're still getting scattered. It's like they went to Waffle House and every day they were scattered, smothered, and chunked, even though they were in the wrong land. In Numbers 10 verse 35. And it came to pass when the ark set forward that Moses said, Rise up, O Lord, rise and let thine enemies be scattered, and let them that hate thee flee before thee. Now, that's exactly what happened. God gets mad and he comes back and he's angry. You know what happens? His enemies hightail it. It's a scary event. Moses says, Rise up, let your enemies be scattered. Guess what? Many a time it was Israel who became the enemy of God. Therefore, they are scattered people. In Deuteronomy 30, verse 3. When Israel has become the enemy of God, doesn't mean it's over. It means repent. Deuteronomy 30, verse 3. That then the Lord thy God will turn thy captivity and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all the nations, whither the Lord thy God hath scattered thee. It's a sign of punishment, God scattering them. So the time of the tribulation is the time of punishment. The 70th week, the final week of that Daniel chapter 9, is the whole tribulation, and Peter's focusing in right on it. I'm talking to you people that have been scattered. You're in the punishment. And I've got way more verses. I'll just give you some verses to write down, and then we won't have to read them all. You don't have to turn here. I'll just give you the references. They all say the same thing, that it's the Jew that's scattered. Kings 22:17, Esther 3 verse 8, Psalm 44:11, Psalm 60 verse 1, Jeremiah 30 verse 11, Jeremiah 31:10, am I going too fast? Jeremiah 30 verse 11, Jeremiah 31:10, 50 verse 17, Ezekiel 6 verse 8, Ezekiel 11:16 and 17, Joel 3:2, Zechariah 1:19, Zechariah 7:14, 1:19 and 7:14, Matthew 9:36, Matthew 26:31, 26. Got this one out of order. Zechariah 13:7. John 11:52. John 16:32. Acts 8:1 and 4. 11:19. And James 1:1. Okay, if you read all of those passages, you'll come away thinking that it's only the Jew that's scattered. But there's also a list of Gentiles that are scattered. But the evidence weighs much more heavy in the case of Israel being both the scattered and the stranger. When you combine both of them together, you know it's Israel he's talking to. All right, Peter, 1 Peter 1, 1 Peter 1, verse 1. Peter, an apostle of Jesus Christ, to the strangers scattered throughout Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia. Okay, all of these Gentile places. And to these people who are scattered, he says this, elect according to the foreknowledge of God the Father, through sanctification of the Spirit, unto obedience and sprinkling of the blood of Jesus Christ. Grace unto you and peace be multiplied. Now, he's immediately used a word that Paul doesn't use as a people here. We're not the elect. Now, we're in the one who is elect, Jesus Christ. However, it's the Jew who is the elect. They're the elect nation, and they're the elect people. That's why you get in tribulation time period, you get the 144,000. They are the elect. They've been elected to a position. That Moses and Elijah, they've been elected to a position. You and I haven't been elected to anything. You know what our job is? To sit down and enjoy the ride. We're in Christ. He's in us. We do nothing. He's the leader. We just sit down and go for the ride. We got a lot of Christians who are bucking their position, wanting to be the great big leader. We don't need any Christian celebrities. We're all nobodies. And we're just following along in the stream of what he's wanting to do. Supposed to be. Okay, so that elect. We'll have to cover the elect next time because we got too much. That'll take us for a while. We'll cover all the different types of elect. There's even elect angels, and y'all can tell me what all that means. I think elect is pretty simple. I just think it means what we do every year. We're about to do it again. When you get a president or you put one in office, you elect him. That is, you give him a job to do. That's what God does. He elects positions. Okay, you're going to do this. You're going to be my witness to the end of the earth. Okay, that's your position. Your election does not mean that you have any eternal security connected with it. That's a different set of words, different phrase. So we'll cover through all the different elects, and you'll find it in Romans, where the Calvinists get sidetracked with the word elect, and we'll see what it really means. Okay, that'll do it for tonight, and we'll pick up verse 2 next week.